Welcome once again, everyone. Cannabis News with Joe Klare for May 23rd, 2018, presented by the Marijuana Times. Check us out at marijuanatimes.org. A bunch of great articles. Plus, if you hit the video tab on marijuanatimes.org, you'll find all of the episodes of Cannabis News. You can find us on Apple Podcasts. Search the Marijuana Times on there for the audio-only version of the show. Of course, we're now on Vimeo, no longer on YouTube still. Vimeo.com/MarijuanaTimesX or the Marijuana Times. Search that on Vimeo. Become a subscriber. Check out the videos. Share, like, comment, all that stuff. We need to have a little rebuilding to do as far as a major video platform. We're doing it on Vimeo. So if you like the show, come help us out today. We're talking about medical marijuana in Ohio, the slow progress there. We talked about this next story a couple weeks ago, I guess it was. They were looking to ban marijuana-infused beer in Michigan ahead of the legalization vote this November. We'll tell you the latest on that. Also, the NRA seems to be finally getting around to expressing some concern when it comes to medical marijuana patients and owning firearms, their Second Amendment rights, all of that. All that's coming up here on Cannabis News. But first, of course, Cannabis News is brought to you by NatureSideCannabis.com. Check out the organic, all-natural pesticides. Natureside Cannabis, grow safe and poison-free. You don't want to use harmful chemicals on your grow, and you want to be regulatory compliant in the state that you grow in. You can do all of these things with NatureSideCannabis.com, a proud sponsor of Cannabis News. And of course, with the lid, as the kids say, make cannabis great again. Do people still say lids? I know a lid is an old term for an ounce of weed, but is it also still, the hat reference? I'm hoping so. Look at these lids. MakeCannabisGreatAgain.com is very easy to remember because you see the hat, and then you just put .com right there, and you have the website where you can get the hat. Some of the proceeds go towards fighting for legalization. It's a great thing. Go check it out. MakeCannabisGreatAgain.com, brought to you by, of course, the Marijuana Times. First story is from marijuanatimes.org by Julia Granowitz. Ohio officials set to announce medical marijuana dispensary approvals this week. Now, after this story was published or whatever, the people in Ohio, the authorities in Ohio, made a decision to push that decision, the decision to push the actual decision in the meeting where the decision was going to be announced to June. They need more time for whatever they need more time for in Ohio. If you've been watching this show and following along with our talks on Ohio and what's going on in Ohio, I'm not going to do a big, how I was right about issue 3 and although most people were wrong about issue 3 thing. I think I've gotten to that enough by now because we're seeing the results of issue 3's failure to pass in 2015. Then Ohio gets this crap medical marijuana program, no home growing, no smokable marijuana. September 8th is supposed to be the launch. They're looking to push that back because they're having problems with the cultivator licenses. They're getting sued. The state of Ohio is getting sued about the cultivator licenses. People who didn't get cultivator licenses are saying that it wasn't free. The people who did get the cultivator licenses are not fair. The ones who did get the licenses are saying that it was fair and that they deserve the licenses. So it's a whole back and forth thing. They're supposed to announce dispensary locations this week. 376 applicants. We're going to be awarded up to 56 locations, 56 dispensaries in the 28 geographic districts within the state. Some of the geographic districts would have like 3 because some would have 0. Because in the western part of Ohio, there was just nobody applied for a dispensary license. But anyway, scratch all of that because now it's been pushed back to June. These things are supposed to be awarded. The licenses are supposed to be awarded in July. They're supposed to be growing marijuana to sell in September. You've got to grow it first, as we've talked about before on this show. Anyone knows about anything about marijuana knows that you just don't snap your fingers and boom, marijuana. You have to grow it, and that takes some time. Even the quickest strains are going to take a couple months and several weeks. They're not getting it done in Ohio, and this is yet another example of that. Now everybody's whining. The people who didn't get licenses, they're saying, "Oh, there's nefarious things going on, and it was unfair." And the state says, "No, it was fine, except for these couple problems we did have." And this guy, got rid of his notes, and maybe there were some scoring errors. It just goes to prove what I've said time and time again, and I'll continue to say. The problem with legalization is the fact that the government has to implement it. The worst people to implement these regulations and these And all of this stuff is the government. And yet they're the only ones that can do it because they prohibited it in the first place. And now we're fighting to get some of our rights back that existed, decades ago when it comes to cannabis. And they're giving us our rights back piecemeal, or we're tearing them away often from the government piecemeal. And, now they have to implement regulation and taxation. And of course, there's too many regulations. There's too many taxes. And that's the way it's going to go. I don't know. I don't know what the remedy of that is, the practical remedy. The obvious remedy of that is that the government just repeals prohibition and that's it. No regulations, no taxes, none of that garbage. But of course, that's never going to happen. In this day and age, that is, people who say things like that will get laughed out of the boat. I'm sure some of you laughed when I said that there should be no taxes and regulations on marijuana. You're probably having a good old chuckle. I get it, It's never, ever, ever going to happen. Nothing even close to that. The government's going to tax the crap out of it. They're going to regulate every aspect down to when dispensaries are open, how much they can have, how much you can buy, what form you can get it in, all of that stuff. And I'm not just talking about the federal governments. I'm talking about state governments, local governments. They will all have their pieces, their claws in what's going on. And we're going to accept it because it's better than prohibition. And what we're going to be left with is just kind of mediocre legalization that's probably not even as robust as alcohol legalization. There's going to be things that people who drink alcohol can still, people who can do, who drink alcohol, there's going to be things they can still do that marijuana users and consumers and sellers and everything and growers are barred from doing. It's going to be decent, not great, but we'll accept it, like I said, because, it's not prohibition. Anything better than prohibition is good in our eyes. Next story from DetroitNews.com. Michigan Senate votes to ban marijuana beer. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. There was rumblings. This Senator Rick Jones, Republican from Grand Ledge, there's more than just a conjecture, more than just an idea. He did it. Michigan Senate on Thursday voted unanimously to ban marijuana-infused beer and wine, a preemptive strike ahead of possible legalization of the drug. As I said, Senator Rick Jones from Grand Ledge. His legislation prohibited this possession and sale of marijuana, beer, wine, spirits, or mixed drinks, regardless of whether or not they contain alcohol. So it's not even the thing about alcohol, which they originally said, well, alcohol and marijuana mixed together, it's a bad combination. Any kind of drink, beer, wine, whatever, mixed drinks, even if it doesn't have alcohol in it, it's been banned in Michigan from having cannabis in it. The former Eaton County sheriff said he was inspired to draft the legislation after hearing about similar products in places like Colorado, where Blue Moon's brewer recently announced it would launch a non-alcoholic beer infused with marijuana, which I don't see what the big deal is, but he said if we don't ban it, we're going to have it, and it's a recipe for disaster, Jones said. If you want it, go to Colorado or Canada. We don't need it here. Well, there you go, people of Michigan. He's telling you, get out. But as I pointed out at the time, they said it's a recipe. He said, well, all these bartenders are saying this is just a recipe for disaster, and all these owners. Well, I said at the time, wouldn't the owners just not sell it then? If it's a recipe for disaster, it's not saying in the law that they have to sell it. They can choose not to if it's such a problem, and I can see where marijuana and alcohol mixed together, they amplify the effects of each other. It can be a problem. And if an owner of a bar feels that way, then don't sell it. There's no need for a ban. But it turns out there's even less need than no need for a ban. The legalization proposal would not allow bars to sell marijuana products, said Josh Hovey, a spokesman for the Coalition to Regulate Alcohol. They have regulated alcohol like marijuana here. Is regulate marijuana like alcohol. The drug can only be sold through state licensed dispensaries, which would need to be standalone entities. So once it passes, Hovey said, people won't be seeing bars or liquor stores, or even convenience stores for that matter, selling cannabis products, just dispensaries. So I guess now even those dispensaries can't sell any kind of non-alcoholic, marijuana-infused liquor or beer. Now this list, beer, wine, spirits, and mixed drinks, I don't know if if that's going to bar soda. I guess they'll get around to that, marijuana-infused sodas. Again, the government. There's no reason for any of this. They're so worried about the devastating effects of marijuana-infused non-alcoholic beer. And the Senate unanimously approved it. They're all very scared of it. And if you don't like it, well, you can go to Colorado or Canada, as he said. people who know nothing about cannabis making policies about cannabis, well, you're going to have some problems. Some things just aren't going to, it's not going to go smoothly. Now, if you've been watching this show or following cannabis news for the last year or more, you know there's been issues between firearm owners and people who want to buy firearms in the United States and being medical marijuana users. The federal government, of course, says marijuana is illegal, and if you violate federal law, you're not allowed to own a firearm. Ergo, if you are a medical marijuana patient, even if it's legal in your state, you're violating federal law, so you can't own a firearm. There's been a lot of back and forth. There's been guidelines issued by the ATF. People charged for lying on their federal gun forms about being marijuana users. We talked about that story out of Maine a few weeks ago. And the NRA has been mostly silent through all of this. But apparently, according to this new story from DallasNews.com, legal marijuana could cost people their guns, and the NRA is worried about it. The NRA recently had their convention in Texas, and they had some speakers, including Jerry Goldstein, talking about medical marijuana and medical marijuana and firearm ownership, and the problem that is happening between those two things, according to the federal government. As far as the federal government is concerned, marijuana remains a Schedule I drug, just like heroin and LSD. Federal law prohibits any awful user of marijuana or any other federally restricted substance from purchasing guns. As I said, a federal law trumps state law according to the U.S. Constitution's Supremacy Clause. The NRA doesn't take an official position on marijuana use, but it's not hard to figure that some percentage of the 50 million or more Americans who own guns use marijuana. An equally large number identify as current marijuana users. The NRA has 5 million members. You have to think a good percentage of them, even if you go with the 10% figure, that seems to be pretty accurate for many adults. Looking at a good chunk of people, that, 500,000, as I do very slow math in my head, 500,000 people who own guns and also are NRA members. That's a lot of people, and that's a lot of dues. And it's a problem, and the fact that the NRA is taking so long to get behind it, I don't know what that's about. I imagine it has a lot to do with federal law. I mean, the NRA has been lenient, I guess, and compromising when it comes to people who violate federal law. They're okay with them not being able to own guns, and marijuana violating federal law. But as has been pointed out before by myself and many other people, someone having to choose between legally owning or legally or possessing a firearm and legally having medical marijuana in their state and being treated with medical marijuana, having to choose between their Second Amendment rights and their health, that's not a choice that anybody should be making. The fact the NRA is behind it now and at least is worried about it is good news for gun owners who are medical marijuana patients. Maybe they can create change where others have failed. Maybe they can force the issue where others couldn't. That remains to be seen, but at least it seems that they're finally paying attention to the issue, which many people in the cannabis community and many people who are gun rights advocates were both sides were wondering if the NRA was ever going to weigh in on this and get involved in this. And apparently they are, at least to a small degree. That's going to do it for Cannabis News. Thank you, everyone. Check out NatureSideCannabis.com, proud sponsor of the show. Organic, all-natural pesticides. Don't use harmful chemicals. Use Natureside products. Go check them out. Check us out on Apple Podcasts, Facebook, all those places. Of course, Vimeo, vimeo.com/marijuana_x. That's going to do it for today, May 23rd, 2018. We'll see you next time on Cannabis News.